Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our weekly energy update for empaths, energetically sensitives, and awakening people. My name is Jona Bryndis. I'm going to be your energy coach here for the next 20 minutes. And because we are live, use this opportunity to ask questions or to comment. You're always welcome. This is why I do this live. First, we're going to start talking about the review of last week, what most energetically sensitives went through. Then I'm going to give a little overview over the themes here that we are dealing with. And then I'm going to give you a few tips for the coming week, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual things that you can do to help yourself to adjust to these collective energies coming in from the outside. All right. Don't forget to smash that like button here. This is my payment. All right. Last week was not too bad, but for some people, as I called it, heavy mental central. There was a sort of a very strong paradox that was coming in here, mostly throughout the weekend, and of course, leading up to yesterday, the Valentine's Day, which is always a little tricky of an energy when one is supposed to love each other or show affection. Then we can get into like incongruences, and so it wasn't really what caused it, but this is usually where it expresses. So there was a little bit of back and forth. A lot of people had issues with this this dualism within, being a soul in a physical body, and they felt the etheric, the unseen coming in and affecting their body, but didn't quite know how to deal with this. We had a TV show here this week where we were asked what it is that a person can do to energetically stabilize their body, so that germs such as the flu virus and so forth can't really affect them that much. And if you guys been following me for a while, then you're pretty well equipped here. I basically talk about this every time, namely what it is that you can do to counteract some of these things that are coming in on the physical, on the emotional, mental, spiritual, and etheric level. There is no one answer, obviously, but from an energetic point of view, it is all about wholeness and balance. So the more congruent we can be, the more whole we can be, which includes, techniques such as centering, self-clearing, and grounding. The less susceptible we are, not just on a physical level, but there is a connection between the physical immune system and the etheric immune system. And we're going to talk about this here today, namely the effects of energetic projection and how that works in our etheric immune system. But first, I just want to cover the last week, and it was a little difficult for me. It always is, to make predictions or to go into the forecast and say, hey, we're going to probably see some violence or some assaults next week, because I see it, but I don't want to be right. And we've had a very tragic event here in the United States yesterday, which is another high school shooting, which is almost characteristic now for what I'm about to mention here for you, as far as like the task ahead of us. But when these things happen, I've been asked many times what this means, and how could so much evil exist. This school shooting is a very good example for what happens to people when they fall through the cracks, when they fall through some of these socially or collectively accepted ways, and they cannot find any way to feel that they belong. That's what breeds violence. That's what breeds, these psychotic outbreaks of energetic release. So there's of course no justification for this. Don't get me wrong, but it shows the pattern here in our society more than anything. All right, and that has to do with how we handle basic respect and self-respect. I have kids in that age, and I see very clearly how it can be difficult for a person when there are no clear core values, and especially when they don't see those core values reflected in society, how it can sort of disrupt a person from within. And then, we're seeking, of course, all these ways that help us to cope. And unfortunately, there's a conditioning of this younger generation going on, especially for the male, the younger male population, and that is the conditioning into releasing their energies through shootings, through these gaming operated places where they can release those energies. And this is a big issue, guys, in the future from an energetic point of view, because there's absolutely no way of really teaching or intervening here for these kids to show them different ways. These ways of these healthy ways of releasing energies that I'm referring to, that has to happen at a very early childhood stage. And if that is not the case, if there is no connection, and if there's no belonging at a very early stage, then by the time these kids are allowed to buy guns or allowed to do things like have driver's licenses and so forth, it's very difficult to judge that. So I want you guys all to feel into this a little bit, and maybe you can relate to some people in your own group, in your own community, where they just sort of fall through the cracks and they have no means of releasing any of this stored grief and pain of separation, other than either going nuts or seeking this in unhealthy expression or coping. So what it is that we can do, and this leads me to the forecast here of next week, is moving away from this paradox, what that I mentioned earlier, this infinite soul and a finite body. Okay, this is the core wound that we all have, so to speak, the core task also. And I said we weren't going to really deal with a lot of karmic stuff this week, but we did, but on a whole different level, on a solar depth level, where it comes really down to what is our soul purpose here? And our soul purpose here is the incarnation of this unified, universal, or divine spark or source, if you wanted to incorporate this, to embody this, right? And this means that any type of separation, any type of polarity, and we've talked a lot about this in the past, it really increases the pain and this wound. And we see this in all different areas of our societies, expressed in racism and, the overpowering or domineering of a certain, cultural or ethnic groups or even genders. So our job here as energetically aware people is to understand and to feel into, how hard it is to respect yourself here in this society when there is absolutely no core value that is being transported by the people who live it. And this is kind of like your purpose here, okay? Because as energetically sensitives, you cannot ignore the fact that there's two things happening at the same time. Just like how when you talk to a person and they say one thing and you feel they mean another thing. This isn't personal at all. This is just showing you how schismatic people are and how schismatic our society still is. And so your job is to go into this respect with yourself so that you can respect the other on wherever they are, whatever stage of their journey or their consciousness development they are, and give them sort of the understanding here that it's okay. It's just like when you talk to a 3-year-old, you're not going to judge the 3-year-old for not being able to understand everything. You're going to go in there and I'm talking around a word that I don't want to use. I don't want to say benefit of the doubt. That would go too far, but I want you to go into this place of stewardship rather than superiorism, because this is something here in this following week that will challenge many of us, to really look at the things that are no longer needed, that are really just expressions of our ego states. And one big one that I see coming in here into expression for next week is spiritual and intellectual specialness, and the separation that comes through that, the superiority that comes through that. Or if you find yourself on the other end, the inferiority. But these are all expressions of separation, guys. These are all expressions of schisms and incongruence. There is no such thing as, me being superior, or me being further up on the ladder, or me being more enlightened than you. This is all total ego bullshit, okay? And this is what breeds, the schism in others and our entire society. So you may think that you've out-vibrated the matrix, but let me tell you, as long as you think that you're better than others, or as long as you judge others, you are not. You're still in the matrix, because that is the conditioning that you have received through the matrix. So letting go of the dualism of this intrinsic conflict that we all have is your task here for the next week. To really go into understanding and to learn efficient ways to deal with, these thoughts of judgment, the thoughts, the critical, the negative inner self-talk, to actively and responsively take it out. I recommended last week that you literally take a thought, and throw it out behind you. This week, you're probably going to be wanting to deal with this. And actually, many of you, as far as I could observe, were pretty good at this. This week, it's more like going into dialogue with it and saying, I'm not buying it. Yeah, I hear it. I hear my specialness. I hear my judgment. I hear, my disdain, or I hear my anger, but I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. This is out vibrating. To go into the truth of what it is that comes in for you, whether that was triggered from the outside or coming from the inside. And I get to this here in a split second, or whether you absorb this from somebody, doesn't matter. When you go into this place of separation, then your system gets separated as well. And as such, that's a bad thing to do for your energy system. It makes you more susceptible to germs, so your physical immune system goes low. It makes you more susceptible to emotional absorption, from others. It makes you more susceptible to overthinking and ultimately also suffering from your own critical inner voice. It makes you special. It makes you superior. And therefore, you're doing the complete opposite of what you think being spiritual means. Yeah, you're separating yourself from others. And on an etheric level, you're projecting something that is basically an open invitation for all the negative energies out there and other people's projections to hit you. So if you've watched the 21 days breaking through the matrix, day 20, I think, where I went really deep into energetic projection and absorption and the mechanics of that. So if you want to learn how, what all this entails and how, this plays into your daily interactions, then watch day 20 of the 21 days here on YouTube in the playlist. So the main point here is for the next week, to check on our attitude, and to really go into this place of, um, learning to trust in your inner knowing and not so much relying on your knowledge. These things in the bigger scope don't really matter that much. What matters is if you can, really be there and see yourself as one, with your environment, with the nature around you, with the people around you. I know that many of you have a hostile or almost disdainful attitude towards other people, and I get it. I'm an energetically sensitive, I'm an empath myself, and yes, it is easy to come to that conclusion that that the collective is bad, and and that they're all just out to get us, and that they're all just trying to manipulate us. But how many times have you actually looked at your own life and how many unconscious manipulation or control mechanisms you have in your relationships, for instance? And this is the second part of the task for next week, namely to really look into our relationship patterns. It's going to be a good week for most of you if you, are already working with all these things. You'll feel a little relief. You'll still have a lot of headaches because there's a bunch of seventh chakra, crown chakra stuff going on now here with the solar eclipse energies that we're working on, and also the new moon. Those are always markers, when there's a little stronger intensity of energies coming in, but it's not going to affect you that much because you not really need to be pulled into the emotional that much. So if you can resolve this in you, that you always have to be the fixer or the rescuer, that you always have to have the answer, and you go more into surrendering to the situation and understanding, providing this mutual respect to other people, or whatever you're dealing with, your relationship partner, and see this as a wonderful opportunity to make corrections. So this next week is all about closure, guys, but in a very positive way. Obviously, there's always a little grieving involved when we let go of things, but the main question here for next week is, what can I let go that is no longer needed? What am I still holding on? Perhaps, with yourself, what am I getting out of staying here or hanging on to this, but letting this go? And for relationships, this can be a wonderful place. I'm feeling this right now as, within myself. It's this place of going into this sort of absolute truth, but the truth not from an intellectual standpoint, but the truth from a heart mind standpoint, where you just have this willingness to completely look at things they are, and then take that, and compare that with your core values and with the things that you want to envision for yourself, based on sort of a larger connectedness, and not so much based on superiority or success or competition. The things that bind you to your solar plexus, to your third chakra. You really want to bring this into your unified sort of heart and mind level, where you can begin to think in a way that brings your intellectual, mental capacities together with your heart base. And once more, when I say heart, I'm not talking about emotions. I'm talking about the information that you're perceiving through your heart center, which is a whole different category of bandwidth here. This is where the solar depth comes in. This is the holographic information that we are experiencing there. And so bringing all this together, and some ways how you can do this, especially for relationships, is a really good time to renegotiate, to make new plans, and to do qualitative visioning, as I called it last week. Like go into vision quest, with your loved one, and really, maybe dedicate an entire meditation session without touching each other, but just sort of honing yourselves, both of you, into the most advantageous future for yourself, and allow your inner guidance to prompt you with certain things, and then talk about it, exchange, and renegotiate things. You don't have to have the fix yet. Remember, anytime you want to fix or rescue or bring things back into order, chances are you back in your ego because you're trying to control the situation too much. This week is really good for opening up the whole play field for a new vision of the future, a new beginning. All right, and many of you may actually discover game changers this week. So this can be anything. I just really want you to look at closure as a good thing. Okay, so closure is a good thing from an energetic standpoint because it reduces energetic attachments. So if this is all you remember here about this coming week 8 from the 16th to the 22nd of February, then you should be well equipped. As far as like the energy tips is concerned, the main chakras affected here in this next week will be our 4th chakra and our 7th chakra. So our heart chakra, once more, the unified, non-dual or non-dualistic view of ourselves, and the 7th chakra, which is the connection with the higher consciousness, the universal divine field, the divine order. And so to bring this into balance, some of you will also have strong first chakra issues. This is like somebody like myself. I have first chakra attachments. I will probably feel this. But if you have, managed to live a life where you feel pretty rooted and you're pretty grounded, I don't think it will affect you that much. But in relationships, you always need to take a look out on, what your partner is going through. And so if your partner is going through a bit of a grieving or a bit of a sadness here, because he or she doesn't feel grounded or rooted, then please understand that and respect that. That's an important part of closure as well. Physically, how that's going to play out, I'm expecting continued headaches. Sorry, guys, me too. Spinal issues. So whenever we go into the solar depth and the 7th chakra stuff, we often experience a backache, but not so much the typical sort of lower back or sciatic nerve or anything in that regards, but more so, like really feeling the energies coming in here in your neck and like shooting down. This has to do with some of the etheric bombardment that we become sensitive to, and in those times it's good to know your etheric protection techniques. Also, because many of you have been dealing with respiratory stuff and flu stuff and so forth, it should get better, but the respiratory stuff is still in the field that's very often here linked to letting go, to closure. So maybe if you can, tune yourself into that and allow yourself a bit more space, like we talked about last week, that will help with the respiratory things going on. Other than that, I would recommend those of you who have been going through, like these cold diseases, to support your lymph system. A good friend of mine, a naturopathic doctor and co-worker here at transCODES, recommended to work with the calendula essences, calendula tinctures, that help to flush out your lymphatic system. There's also good videos out there, on foods that support, the pipe cleaning, as I called it, and exercises as well. But, it oftentimes if you just tune into your lymph system, maybe educate yourself a little bit and see what it really is that it does and understand it a little better, then you will intuitively be drawn to things that help it. So we had a lot of ginger here last week and French onion soup, wonderful healing foods, for going through respiratory stuff and going or wanting to support our own system with this sort of flushing. On the physical level, to tune yourself a bit more into this solar depth, if you will, that we are facing. Remember the simple things in life, the simple joys, the very simple ones, okay? These will help you to get through this week where it goes a little deeper into the areas where you feel maybe not so grounded, seeding out, seeds, for the coming spring, indoors if have to be, very, very simple things that tune you back into this physical life, but in a very gentle way. Emotionally, it's the same thing, to align yourself to the simple joys, but I'm not talking about coping or gratification. I'm talking about, like what brings you really joy. And for those of you who have to deal with letting go of things that are no longer needed, to learn how to let go in love, in mutual respect. That would be sort of the challenge here, to see things the way they are, and to even come to the conclusion that you need to let go, but to do this from a place of it's okay. All right. And then mentally, this is something that will probably continue for another week or so. It's what I mentioned earlier, this inner dialogue that you learn. You train yourself to go into this inner dialogue and not believe everything that your ego mind is coming up with. Okay, so not buying it. I'm not buying it. Okay, this should be your remedy for this week. But for those of you who don't have, particularly deal with this onslaught on critical inner voice, you can work on this in a different way, namely asking yourself, is this thought or is this feeling or is this action, is this based on love? Is this based on unconditionality? Is this unconditional here, what I am putting out into the world or not? So you train yourself to see and feel more intellectually here on a mental level, if something is actual congruent with your higher vibratory goals. And spiritually, then, this can actually lead to you wanting to align yourself to only the things that express love, that express unconditionality, because that is part of the divine order, not law and order, but the divine order in the sense of this is how the universe is organized, right? So love, light, truth, those are all words, those are all resonances that tune you in to the higher vibratory field around you. So as opposed to going against it, you are aligning yourself to it, and the way you can do this is uncovering the things in your life that are really not yet based on truth or light or love. On a behavioral or a relationship level, this will be a really good week to discover some of these unconscious relationship patterns. Once more, if you haven't done so, watch the energy training videos here on YouTube that give you a lot of education about how to identify behavioral patterns, and then also how to disrupt them. We're probably going to have to talk about this next week. I have an inkling. For those of you who are energy workers and you really want to work this energy, besides of course the willingness to let go in love, what you can do is really watch your projections. There's going to be a lot of etheric stuff flying around this next week, okay? And you may feel this still in sleepless nights, and a lot of like sudden realms opening up for you, increased dreaming and visioning. And you could go full frontal and actually seek this week for vision quests, and to actually go deep, go really deep. Or you can just work on weeding out, the things that the bad energetic habits that you still have. Where do I project? Because the more you project, the more you will feel bombarded. Okay, so mind your etheric protection knowledge here, and try to implement this week. Energy barometer for this week is unbelievably good. So many people have asked me in the past, will we ever have green? This can be a really good week for you guys. But once more, this is a matter of individual perception and consciousness level. So some people may perceive the letting go and the closure aspect of this next week as very dramatic. That's why, so many energy tips here for this next week. But overall, the situation is actually really optimistic and leads to very positive outcome for the not just immediate short-term future, but long-term future. I'm starting to get ready now for the Crypto Spiritual Weekly. That's the energy update for the crypto sphere here in 20 minutes. So if you're interested in how all these collective energies, how they express in the crypto market, now there you are. Yes, it always just takes a little bit. And then tune in here at 3 p.m. US Denver time in about 20 minutes for the Crypto Spiritual Weekly. I wish you a wonderful week. Enjoy the simple things in life. Yes, good to see you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you next week.